Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk About Climate, a podcast where we talk about climate change and how it relates to all of us. Join us, Change Chamber Fellows, as we talk with scientists, grassroots campaigners, politicians, and more to open up the conversation on climate. I'm your host, Mary Crockett, and today we're going to be talking about networking, local storytelling and activism, and multifaceted career paths in the world of sustainability. Our guest today is Change the Chamber's own Director of Research and Publications, Camille Rohde. Camille has a Bachelor of Science in Geography and Environmental Science and has a sociology minor. She's an aspiring climate journalist hoping to focus on intersectional climate journalism and public health issues. She's come on to the podcast today to tell us a little bit about her own versatile background and tell me, as well as all of you listening, how you can get on the ground experience to get the career you want and ultimately contribute your individual value towards an equitable and sustainable future.
As we move forward, it's not really going to be as much about how we stop climate change, but how we create adaptive communities in societies.
If you've clicked on this podcast today, if you are listening, there's a few things I know about you. I know you're compassionate about the people around you. I know you care and you want to have an impact towards making their lives and everyone's lives better. I know you envision a better world through all of this doom and gloom, but you just don't know what to do about it or how to make an impact. Well, this episode is going to help you there, I promise. So let's jump right in. Thank you so much for being here today, Camille.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm super excited.
So, what made you want to take on the role of the Director of Research and Publications, and how does your background inform what you do currently?
Yeah, so as you know, as a National Climate Fellow at Change the Chamber yourself, Change the Chamber allows you to try on a lot of different hats in science-based climate policy advocacy, and you can get acquainted with different forms of that, whether that's hosting a podcast, doing social media storms, writing articles, sort of connecting with and having meetings with congressional and corporate stakeholders. So I really found my niche per se and found myself really honing in on and leaning into the research and publications team. And as I was taking on more and more research and publication style roles, writing articles, as well as writing a policy brief on the carbon pollution standards last year and sort of pulling together databases and stuff. It sort of got to the point where I had discussion with my co-team leads where I was offered the position of team lead and then eventually director of research and publications. And I really love the work that I do because I've been getting acquainted and can help the people that I supervise get acquainted with various forms of media and publications in the climate reporting space, whether that be Substack, local media, public statements being issued to larger news outlets and different, channels to report on what I'm really passionate about, which are small town sustainability success stories. My background is I've had sort of a grab bag per se of different experiences throughout my career. So at college, so I have a BS in environmental science and geography with a minor in sociology, but I was also a laboratory proctor for Geographic Information Systems Lab for a while. I was a grant writer on the grant writing team for my school's chapter of Engineers Without Borders for a while. I was a philanthropy chair for my academic sorority for women in STEM for a bit, and I would say one of my most rewarding experiences prior to Change the Chamber was being a member of the National Model United Nations conference team. The biggest thing is I was able to take all this sort of technical knowledge and my extracurriculars and all of the host of different experiences I've had into my work and help inform intersectional journalism in the spaces that I work on in the research and publications team, and also has really helped to, I think, even bolster the increased media literacy, increased technical literacy, and civic literacy that my work in research and publications and the congressional and corporate communications team really empowers.
It's really great that you're an example of the pathways that are kind of more untraditional from technical to this realm of advocacy, whereas you kind of followed these little steps that led you to this point, versus, well, I guess I can ask you this question. Would you say you had it all planned out, or is it more of kind of you took what was coming?
Yeah, I would say more I took what was coming because even I really didn't know that I wanted to pursue intersectional climate journalism until the past couple of years when I was graduating. At that point, I wasn't exactly sure what path environmental science was going to take me because just saying, oh, I work in climate, I work in environmental science could mean any host of things. And my career path has definitely changed a lot. I would say at the beginning of my bachelor's, I wanted to be a environmental engineer focused on sustainable clean drinking water systems. And while that's an amazing realm of work and I have great respect for the people who do that type of work, I ended up pivoting a bit. And I think it's especially in such a modern dynamic environment that we're in. So I very much took what was sort of through different trial and error as well as trying on different hats and exploring different realms of climate advocacy and climate work and seeing what fit best for me. And climate journalism, it just more and more I feel that it's the right path for me and what I want to do, and just such a good marriage of my different intersectional interests, which I've always had a lot of.
That's great. Thank you for sharing with us that, your journey, and it's always okay to pivot, always okay to pivot. I'd love to ask you a little bit about specifically what are some projects you're currently working on, and do you have any favorites, favorite current projects or favorite past pieces that you've worked on?
My most recent project that I currently wrapped up was actually my coworker Manushi Sharma and I were able to host a workshop during day 3 of DC Climate Week called Storytelling for Environmental Changemakers and Do-Gooders, which really focused on sort of main objectives and driving points of the environmental changemaker training certificate offered through Change the Chamber, helping different environmental and climate professionals find their why for what they do and be able to communicate that succinctly and effectively. Because I do so much work remotely, it was really empowering and gratifying to be in person and have each person kind of who attended the talk share their personal why for what they do, and write that down on a sticky note and put that on a poster board to sort of form a mosaic of sort of environmental change maker stories. So that was definitely one of my favorite projects thus far. A second one of my favorite projects was a piece that I co-wrote. It was an article called Keeping the Lights on, Marrying Disability Justice with Electric Grid Resilience. And that was focused on sort of the Bay Area and San Francisco, maintaining public safety during power outages for electricity dependent people with disabilities. And part of the reason that that's one of my favorite pieces I've worked on so far is I was able to interview this really phenomenal disability justice and electric grid expert and consultant named Alex Guinness, who's the founder of Accessible Climate Strategies in the Disability YMBY blog. And being a paraplegic himself and working in the climate space for so many years, and at the intersection of electric grid resilience and disability advocacy, he was able to offer such a valuable perspective and insight onto how we best ensure the safety of electricity dependent individuals with disabilities in the event of a power outage. And I was able to learn about a lot of cool grassroots local solutions.
What are your own kind of, you've touched on this a little bit already, but what are your own professional goals and aspirations for your future, and how do you see your current work empowering you to achieve those goals?
Yeah, so my goal is to, again, pursue intersectional climate journalism and be someone who consistently reports on small town sustainability success stories and provides a platform for those stories, because I feel like we hear the sort of federal stage of climate players, if you will, is there's a lot of important stuff going on there, but it's really the community-led grassroots movements that drive change on the local level. So I think highlighting that, whether that looks like me being a Substack author or a freelance journalist, a lot of freelance journalists are moving to the Substack space. So if you're thinking about pursuing that for that career, definitely look on to Substack. There's so many really powerful voices that are moving onto that platform. But being able to highlight those best practices, there's this publication that just came out of the New York Times called 50 States, 50 Fixes by the Climate Desk there at the New York Times that highlights a lot of those solutions. So doing stuff similar to that in that vein for sure.
Yeah, and it seems like you're really working towards that. I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. My mom always says, you're not on a path, you're in the right direction, right? We can't predict every opportunity that's going to present itself next, but you're doing all the right things to reach your goals. You're breaking up your goals into pieces and working your way there. And that's really admirable.
Thanks. Yeah, definitely. I find DC Climate Week, hopefully that's a thing going forward into the future, but I've been able to forge a lot of great connections there. I definitely recommend, again, like attending things like New York City Climate Week and San Francisco Climate Week are definitely the two big conferences like that. Society of Environmental Journalists has a yearly conference. Definitely like being in a physical space with like-minded people in your career field, at least this week has proven to me, is just really bears a lot of fruit.
Very true, very true. And those events are really helpful for meeting people and learning from the world. All right. I'm curious, we often try to follow people in our path or in our field to get to where we want to go. And I'm wondering, is there anybody, whether you know them directly, you've met them once, or they're, way out there, is there anyone you really look up to in the sustainability space or in any field, and why?
Yeah, so one person who I would say who I was able to meet via a webinar, she was a panelist there, they were a panelist there, is Kyla Smith. They've been a really powerful environmental justice and equity advocate. Kyla was able to spearhead sort of a campaign advocating for more affordable rates for ratepayers in the area of Madison, Wisconsin. And they were able to successfully spearhead a campaign to get their public service commission to lower those rates and to become more manageable and to control those rates. So that's another great local sustainability success story. Another person who I found, who I actually just saw at a talk, a health and climate talk hosted by the Milken Health Institute at George Washington University, is Dennis Chestnut, and he is a lifelong resident of Ward 7 in DC, and he has done for decades, he has spearheaded sustainability advocacy in his community through working with partners like the Anacostia Watershed Society and also getting land parcels back that were owned by the federal government or managed by the National Park Service back to and converting back into green space. Like an area that was previously the only municipal landfill in DC and was right by the Anacostia Watershed and located in Ward 7. He was able to facilitate cleanup of that area and help turn that back into a green space. And he's done a lot of work to create a Ward 7 Resilience Hub Community Coalition and does a lot of work with the youth in that area. Part of the reason his stories really stuck with me is because he was telling these local stories about how he and the other kids used to play in the landfill, and the landfill was full of, sort of all this waste that was really dangerous, and the landfill didn't get shut down until a 7-year-old boy died from exposure to hazardous waste in that landfill. So I would say those two definitely as local leaders in their own specific communities. Another person that I really admire who is a total rock star in her field is Dr. Jennifer Alla J. She is a professor at UCLA in the environmental engineering department. And a lot of the work that she does helps provide free testing for lead, radon, and other potential neurotoxins and carcinogens in the water and soil for totally free in a lot of cases for residents of the greater LA County area. So she has this incredible technical expertise. In addition, she's also a good family friend and is like the nicest person ever on top of all of that, and is also helping to provide, this really critical service for a lot of the members of her specific community.
Great. I thank you for bringing up a range of your mentors, because I see you've got, people you've met, and you've got youth that inspire you. You've got a variety of people that inspire you from different perspectives, and they all seem to really care and be passionate about the work that they're doing. Encompassing all your work, how do you think what you're doing contributes to the goals and mission of the larger climate movement? And how do you stay motivated when climate news gets overwhelming?
Yeah, so to address the latter part of your question first, when things get overwhelming, again, I go and look back to, okay, what is grounding my community and what is grounding the other communities across the country? Where are, once again, those small town sustainability success stories, and what is positive and what is happening there? One thing I've done recently, and this is something I actually started before the New York Times 50 States, 50 Fixes project was released, is developing my own regional and state climate wins database about different wins, different things that different states have passed. I know New York State is the third state to pass a climate superfund law that happened late last year. And looking back at those like specific statewide examples when things seem too ominous and very like doom and gloom at a global stage or at a federal or national level. But I would say in terms of what my work contributes is providing examples of these resilience hubs, these climate resilience hubs. As we move forward, it's not really going to be as much about how we stop climate change. And of course, yes, how we mitigate harms, but how we create adaptive communities and societies that are best able to safeguard and protect their people in the event of a more hostile climate landscape. I really feel a strong need to highlight those best practices because we need them, and hope that things even on that scale, even if it's something like a microcosm, can be applied and as a model that can be applied elsewhere. And then also working with the people under like the research and publications team at Change the Chamber. My goal is also sort of upscaling mine and all the people I work under our media literacy, civic literacy, and technical literacy to empower us to be more informed, better environmental change makers for the communities we serve.
Again, in such admiration of all the passion projects you do as well. It seems like you kind of take an opportunity, or you see an opportunity, and you really take control of that, and that's really amazing. And kind of a final question, what advice would you give to someone younger than you in high school or maybe college, or even someone at the same stage as you who is entering the green workforce? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so definitely the biggest one is don't be afraid to ask questions, whether that's professors or mentors in your local community and stuff. I find typically if you just send them a polite message and reach out, a lot of people really love talking about the work that they do, whether that's research, if they're a really dedicated public servant, if there's someone who works in the nonprofit space or private sector. Definitely don't be afraid to like reach out to people to ask them about their work. And also don't underestimate what's going on at the local level. There's so many things, your town board, community gardens, the public services commission that determines a lot of what the energy grid of your state looks like, on that state level. There are a lot of moving parts to local governance and there's so much going on. So definitely don't underestimate that. Definitely support your local papers, especially if you're in the journalism space. There's always a lot of good opportunities there. And don't be afraid to try different things. Your career path is not set in stone. You don't get written off being uh, pursuing civil engineering just because you turned around and then did policy advocacy here. There are a lot of different things in professional pursuits. They're not mutually exclusive. You can be several things at once, and you can pursue several different career paths.
That is some great advice. Yeah, talking to people, getting out there. There's a quote by um Jay Shetty. He's a psychologist and a monk, and he's been a consultant. He's been a monk. He's been I'm pretty sure he was maybe like a teacher or something. And he says, everyone in the world is someone you could learn from.
Absolutely.
Well, Camille, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And as a fellow Change the Chamber National Climate Fellow to another National Climate Fellow, it's great to learn from you.
Yeah, it was fantastic to learn from you too. And thank you so much for spearheading this series. I'm so excited to see where it goes.
And thank you, our listener, for taking the time out of your day to learn from Camille, so you can be a change maker for our future too. And guess what? You can start right now. Send this episode to somebody who you think would benefit from our discussion today. Maybe because they have the skills to make the change and need a push, or maybe because they have started on their journey and need a little advice. We all have it in us to make real and positive change. Sometimes it's just about getting started. I'm Mary Crockett. Thanks for listening.